My name is Lee Tomasini, LeeTomasini.
Really? What was dingling there?
It's a fire truck.
Fire truck? There's a sound in the background, some bells ringing.
I don't know what that is.
Maybe a church bell.
It's a fire truck backing in.
Oh, across the street. Okay.
Okay, great. Another thing is, I wanted to tell you is, and you did it perfectly when you answered me there, is answering in complete sentences, because we're gonna edit me out, so it'll just be you talking. So when you answer the questions, like you said, my name is Lee Tomasini, you spell it this way. That's the perfect way to answer the questions, because then you don't need to hear the question that I asked.
Okay.
Perfect. A+. And they're still backing up.
They're still backing in there.
Well, I don't hear that coming through very much, Jennifer.
That across the hall?
Across the street.
Must be across the street there, because they didn't open the doors here.
Oh, I bet you hear that when they open the doors, huh?
Yeah.
It makes quite a bit of noise here. Like
There goes the doors, right there.
Like that. It makes a noise like that.
I can hear
Well,
that.
we'll give them a
Then you're going to really get excited when the whistle goes off. Yeah. We got an hour and a half for unless there's a call.
Okay, well, let's cross our fingers there isn't a call. Because we're going to be over at Marie and Don Boynton's at noon today.
Oh, Marie and Dawn? Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be needing a little time to get there. As soon as that beeping sound stops. So,
They're gonna close the door?
No, it'll stay open now.
okay, great. So, Lee, how old were you in the 1964 flood? And you can answer that. I was, however many years old.
So that's 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years ago, so I'm 78, 50, 60, 70, 28 years old.
So say it in a complete sentence. I was 28.
During the 64 flood, I was 28 years old.
And what did you do for a living then?
I worked for Humboldt County Roads. I was an equipment operator.
And did you live here in Ferndale during the 64 flood?
During the 64 flood, yes, we lived here in Ferndale.
Now, what were your experiences during the flood? Having worked for the road crew, you probably had to do a lot of work on the roads, a lot of grading and work on repairing roads. What was that like?
On the morning of the 20th, my boss came and got me at 6 o'clock in the morning, said we're having flood conditions. We have a slide that we need to clean up to get the road open, which is on Blue Slide Road. And I went and fired up my road grader and headed out that way. When I headed out, went and pushed the slide off the road, pushed the road through it. And the water was just pouring off the hillsides. It was raining. And on my way back at Coffee Creek, which is this side of Crosby Road, we raised that since the flood, but at that point in time, there was a dip there, and water was starting to fill into that dip when I come through. I came back to town and waited for the boss to show up. They'd gone to other places, and then they set me up on the Wildcat because there was some slides up there, which is the Mattoll Road. I went up and worked on that. I got back somewhere around, probably noon or so, ate lunch, and the water apparently had gotten pretty high at Coffee Creek coming through there. Ferndale at that time was being blocked off, couldn't get out. They took a dump truck because the people couldn't get through with the car no more, and they went out with a dump truck and, brought in probably 10, 12 people they picked up out there and brought them back across. Merle and Louise Goff did not want to leave. So they stayed. There was people that wanted to stay in their houses. They lived right there, had the Waddington store, and they lived next door to it. And eventually the water got coming in and started crossing the road, and Louise got nervous and wanted to come to town. So they asked if I would go out with the road grader because a dump truck, they were worried about not making it with the dump truck. So I went out with the road grader and picked up Louise. When I come back through with the road grader, the water was right at the bottom of my cab, which is probably close to 4 feet. And that was about the last trip I made. We worked on the toll road most of the time, trying to keep the road open to Petrolia. We kept the road open to go to above Bear River Ridge to get to Riadel so we could get out. Well, meantime, we lost the bridges at Riadel, so there was no going south that way. And that was basically it for about 3 days, I guess. And finally the river settled down, and they hired a man by the name of Flip Wire from Riadel, and he had a TD-25 Cat, and it's equivalent to a D8 Cat. It's actually, his was an International. And they dropped him off at the end of Price Creek because we had to go up over Weymouth Bluff. The road was washed out below, coming around below on the river bar. And they had to drop him off because there was 2 hard switchbacks and they couldn't bring a low bed around that. So he walked that cat from there over, and then I followed him. And we headed down Pleasant Point Road, and he'd pushed the logs out of the road because I couldn't move them with the grader. And then after he went through, I came along and pushed the silt back and made it passable for traffic. When we got to the main highway into Ferndale, which they just built that highway.
Oops, let's take a little break. We've got the garage door going up, I guess.
Can you hear that, Lee? Can you hear that door?
Yes, I hear it.
I think you can feel it in your chair.
Yeah, you feel the vibration.
Okay.
So when we got to the main highway that they just built, the state was over on the other side, and they had a little bitty cat trying to open it up. And they couldn't, and they sent a guy over, wanted to know if Flip could go over, because there was 3 big washouts, probably 20 foot wide and 6-8 foot deep. And so they asked Flip if he could come over and just push a ramp down on each side so they could get through, which he did. He went over and knocked off the edges and got it pushed down. Then I went over the grader and kind of smoothed it up for him. Then we headed down Goble Lane. We went all through the valley. I followed behind him. There was logs and lumber, trees, and everything all over, and that's basically what we did for about 2 days. Went around, opened up the roads. Then my main job after that was at Weymouth Bluff. We had a highway patrol. We had a highway patrol at this end of Weymouth Bluff, and we had a highway patrolman at Howe Creek. And we would let traffic go through south, and we'd let them come back through north. And because of the amount of traffic on that Weymouth Bluff Road, we had a real bad spot in there for about 40 feet. It was just turned to mush. It was mud. There was no gravel. So I had to go through and traffic go through there. I'd stay there and I'd blade the traffic through, and they'd send them milk trucks for Riadel and stuff from the creamery. They'd get stuck in it. They couldn't make it, and I'd have to pull them through. And we had 2 welfare workers that were at each end, and they'd signal me when somebody got stuck or something, because I had to park up out of the way in the wide spot. And I did that for 2 weeks, and that was my main job. I'd go to work at 7 in the morning, I'd finish at 7 at night. The road was open from 7 to 7, and they shut it down. Then after that, we started going around the valley cleaning up, doing bore work, cleaning up and stuff. We worked about a week on graveling Bear River Ridge, because that was our main road going to Riadell, and that took a beating. And that was about basically it. Then things got settled down to normal. Had 2 flat tires in my excursion. We had 1 spare. And finally they had to fly. Everything was brought in by helicopter. And they brought me a tire by helicopter and dropped it off the fairgrounds, and we picked it up there. And otherwise, actually it wasn't bad for our home life, because no electricity for 7 days. So everything in the freezers defrosted. I had a lot of meat in the freezer. Took some of it to the fairgrounds, because they'd set up emergency centers down there. And we brought, my neighbor, Jane Sweet, had canned a lot of fruit, so we ate good for quite a while there. I was one of the lucky ones, because we had a wood cook stove with a water tank. So I could come home at night and take a shower, a nice hot shower. We had 2 kids at that time, 2 children, a girl and a boy, and every day we were allowed to go down and get half gallon of milk and bread that was provided at the fairgrounds that they brought in. And we got other supplies, but milk and bread we were given every day, because we had children. My daughter came down with, if I remember right, it was scarlatina fever. And she ran a fever for about 3 days, right around 104, 105. Dr. Crane would come every day, and he told the wife, if this don't break by tomorrow, he says, we're going to have to fly her to the hospital. And luckily, it broke. And we come out all right. 2 weeks later, she got the measles. So, when it rains, it pours. But I've seen a lot of stuff. I took a lot of movie pictures that I gave to I think the museum made a movie there. Down on where Tosties live now, they were there then, the whole side of the barn was washed out, but all the cows were in the stanchion, all drowned right there in the stanchions. My neighbor, Hard Etlison, was a veterinarian, and he told me about having to go down to the beach. And they took a cat down there, because there was 300-400 cows on the sand dunes down there, washed up and drowned there. And they just took a cat down there and dug pits and buried them right there. There's a lot of animals around the valley that had passed away. The Borges family was one of the funny things, or not funny things, but one of the things that I remember hearing. Their house washed away, and their dog was in the house. And about a week later, they found the dog. Thing lodged down at the beach, and the dog got out, and they finally got him back. Those are some of the little things I remember on the flood.
Got a great memory. I listened to the interview you did with Wendy, and it just seems like so many things are coming back to you now. I think you've had more time to think about it, and a lot of your memories are.
I guess, I don't know. After you called me, I tried to start thinking about a lot of this stuff, and yeah.
One of the things you were talking about is Blue Slide Road, and that became really important because that became for a while, since we didn't have 101.
Right. That was 101 Road, yes. They came over Blue Slide, and Mercer Fraser did that job. They rocked and paved the road they paved it from the river bar all the way to Fernbridge. And that was the main road for 6-7 months till they got the bridges back in. So that was our main thoroughfare.
And like you said, the
brand new road, just been
$1 million.
completed, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what made it bad, why it tore apart so bad. You know, it hadn't a chance to pack or anything. There was a house right there, right off of Fernbridge, that floated away. Then Lowhides had a kind of a leather shop where they sewed like recliners and that type of stuff on the corner of Substation. That washed away.
Where's Substation?
Substation Road is, you come into Ferndale and you take a left turn, the first road you come to, first turn off, and that's Substation Road. Takes you back to the river bar. You continue on, it becomes Waddington Road.
Okay, I've taken that road, I just didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, could you talk more about Ferndale Fairgrounds and the purpose of the fairgrounds during the flood? It seemed like that was a real hub for people.
Well, that was the dairymen that could brought their cows there because they have milking facilities there and everything. And they brought cows in. I don't know how many. There's probably 500-600 head of cows that they saved or brought in there. They set up. They had cots for people to sleep on. Food was provided there. Of course, the milk was milk there. They had to dump it. They had no way of getting it to the creamery until the road got opened up. And that, basically, I never really got down there that much. The wife did most of the running back and forth to the fairgrounds. At that time, in '64, our maintenance station was at where the Ferndale Museum is now. That's where we worked out of. Then in '77, we moved to the fairground, built a new station.
And that's a pretty high spot there. I think that's over 40 feet. It seems like I've seen maps and it shows that this 40-foot level, Ferndale was pretty protected, like the main.
Right, yes. They launched boats where the new Nielsen Company place is now. That's where they launched the boats when they went out to rescue people. Carl Jurgensen and David Fry went out on a rescue pretty late in the afternoon down to the Bruga Ranch, which is down by Camp Weot. And the wind was kicking up pretty good. And they got down there, got the Brugas into the boat, and by the time they got there, you had to watch where you're going because you had a lot of fences, and they carried wire cutters, they got hung up on the fence, and you had to watch for floating debris coming down because the boats were only 12, 13-foot boats they were using. And finally it started getting dark, the wind kicking up good, and they decided not to come back. They had radios from the fire department, and they radioed back that they were going to spend the night in the barn. And that's where they spent the night. And then they came out the next morning. That was one of the stories I'd heard from people there. I was with the fire department at that time, so that's where I heard, come up the station when I could and find out what was going on the rescue and stuff.
Let's see. And also, there was a slide on Monument Road. Is that right?
Yes, Monument Road. That's the one you go up the Wildcat or Mateau Road to Bear River Ridge. Then it's 9 miles across Bear River Ridge, and then you drop down Monument Road right into Riadel. That was one of the roads I had to keep open. Had a couple slides on that. I had to run over and open up. One night I got called out on that, and I don't know why, but by then we'd opened up the Kemp Bluff, Weymouth Bluff was open then, and they were worried in case the ambulance or something had to make a run. And I went over there probably before I came back home because I'd worked till 7, but I know I had to use the lights on the grader to get over there and open that slide up. Push a hole through is all we did.
So thinking when you were saying you worked from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you worked a lot in the dark because it was winter and it was like the darkest time of the year.
Right. Yeah, we were using lights, so we tried to keep it open. Usually by 7, we'd probably quit at 6:30, and by the time I got home, it'd be 7 o'clock. But I'd be there in the morning, and it was kind of nice because they had a fuel truck that came around and fueled the grader. When I got to work, the grader was fueled and ready to go. Another little incident there that I go back to the highway patrol, check with them maybe around 9, 10 o'clock, and they'd be eating coffee and drinking donuts. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? You know, because I knew they didn't bring them. Well, I found out that the Prima Marca was making a run hauling his bread. He had the bakery here, and he was hauling bread and stuff, and he'd always stop and give the highway patrolman donuts. So I figured he's not going to go through my spot without my getting a donut. So I started getting my donut in the morning too. But probably about 5 days after we did that, when they opened the main road to Fernbridge, Salvation Army came by every day, and they had coffee and donuts. I'm not a coffee drinker, but they gave it to my flagmen there, the people that, but I'd get a donut from them. And then the creamery started running milk and stuff to Riadel, and so Jim Pedrati was running the creamery truck at that time, and he'd stop and give me a little shot of chocolate milk or something to keep me going for the day. So there was benefits that you had, extra perks.
It's nice too to hear about. I mean, people can, you know, some people feel like, oh, there's nothing that I can do to help this disaster. But it seems like there's something for everybody to do, because even the simplest things like getting somebody a hot something to drink when it's cold and now they're working in the rain, and you know, it's a good thing to keep people going, to keep their morale up. Yeah.
It's a funny thing. You know, you see people on the street and you talk to them and everything, and well, you know, it's all right. But create a disaster and your family.
I think that's really something that we're finding, you know, when we started doing this film, we're like, well, what's this film about? And it starts out about this very general idea of a disaster and the physical things that happen. But what we're finding as we're talking to people is it's becoming a story about how people come together during times of disaster and help each other. And also about how Humboldt County maybe fares better because of our number of people who are used to working with their hands and who do physical work and are maybe better equipped when there's a disaster to put things back together again.
Right. Yes. You know, you got dairy farmers. They're people that are actually, you know, working, and I find that I was with the fire department for 43 years, and you know, you see family burned out, people would show up. They bring clothes. You know, they made sure those people were taken care of. It's a small town takes care of their own.
I think that's a really good point, yeah. And I think just like you were saying, these people, you know, I think what I've noticed just being around farmers more is that you can't just run to town for things. So you think differently. You think, how can I make this work? I don't have the exact thing that I need to make this work, but how can I fix this problem? They're really good at problem solving, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, they're taking care of stuff every day, and like I say, you know, you see people, and until a disaster strikes, you find out what their mettle is.
I think that's true. Let's see. Any other questions? Oh, I wanted to ask you about your wife, and because it sounded like maybe she was involved in kind of also helping out during the flood and helping families. That might have been down at the fairgrounds?
Basically, she was, like I say, our daughter was sick. She was basically stuck at home with her. She'd run down and grab our milk and bread, and that was about it, keeping the house and keeping the home fires burning because it was cold.
That's a good thing to be doing.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, another thing I was wondering when you said that you were getting bread and milk, the creamery had been down for a while due to the location of the creamery, the flooding, and the power outages and that sort of thing. And then a lot of these cows were killed, and even the ones that weren't killed hadn't been milked for a while, so they weren't maybe producing milk. Was it like powdered milk that was coming in, or were you getting milk from somewhere else?
No, they were bringing milk in. Like I say, they parked the aircraft carrier off of the coast here, and everything was brought in by helicopter. Whether it came out of Eureka down below, I don't know. The creamery actually, well, I don't know. They must have had some milk, because I remember it was challenge milk on some of the cartons. I don't know how soon, but there was probably some dairies they could get to higher up in Lolita and Arcata and stuff, enough produce milk and probably deliver it to the stores locally, and they'd bring milk in there. We had orange juice that was brought in. So for a week, until they opened up the road, that's the way we got all our stuff was brought in by helicopter.
You guys have any questions?
Well, you gotta tell that fishing story again.
Okay, what happened to your finger? They want me to have you tell your fishing story. What happened to your finger?
Well, I took my granddaughter fishing out to Ruth Lake, and she caught a nice trout. So we cleaned the trout up, and I put it in the cooler, and of course I was sloshing my hand in the water, and I didn't realize that they'd planted northern pike in there, and as I was sloshing the water, the thing come up and grabbed the end of my finger, and it wouldn't let go, and it tore it up pretty bad before I got it loose. Then I had to take it because I knew I had to go to the emergency room, and it was all jagged. So I went home and I trimmed it up on the table saw, and then they were able to lay it over, and we're going to save the finger. It's going to be short. I only have a half a nail, but it'll be less I have to clean and trim.
It's true. And it'll, maybe won't be your pointing finger anymore. It just won't be.
Well, it won't point as far as the other one, no.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming down and spending your time and retelling your story for us. We really appreciate it.
Not a problem. No. Like I say, it was quite an experience.